Trell's four-fingered hands trembled as he stared at the readout. It couldn't be right. He blinked his large amber eyes and checked again. This can't be possible, he whispered, his voice thin in the sterile air of the empiricals lab. The test subject, the human, should have been unconscious within minutes of exposure to the isolation pathogen. Instead, the pink-skinned creature sat calmly in the quarantine chamber, showing no signs of distress. Dr. Trell had spent his entire 300-year career studying life forms across the galaxy. None had ever resisted a council-grade pathogen before. His heart raced with a mixture of scientific excitement and deep fear. Dr. Trell, the council requests an update, said his assistant, Nor, her scaled skin shimmering under the blue lights. Tell them we need more time, Trell said, unable to take his eyes off the human. The creature, Jack he called himself, had been found gathering plant samples in a remote forest on the Deathworld. Earth was classified as Class 12, a planet so dangerous that most galactic species would die within days from the aggressive microbes, extreme weather and varying gravity. Yet humans had evolved there, thrived there. Through the glass, Jack looked back at Trell. There was no fear in those strange white and blue eyes. Only curiosity. The same curiosity that had made Trell disobey council protocol and bring a Deathworlder aboard. You're not sick, Trell said through the translator. How do you feel? Jack shrugged, a curious human gesture. Fine. A bit hungry maybe? Trell checked the pathogen levels again. Not only was Jack unaffected, but his body was actively destroying the pathogen, breaking it down into harmless proteins. Impossible, Nor whispered, looking over Trell's shoulder. That strain killed everyone on Proxima Colony. 16 million dead in 3 days. Trell felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Council had developed the bioweapons as the ultimate deterrent, ensuring peace through mutual assured destruction. If humans were immune, the lab door slid open. Admiral Vex entered, his military uniform tight across his broad chest, metals gleaming. The human should be contained by now, Vex said, voice hard. Why is it still conscious? Trell swallowed hard. Sir, its immune system, it's unlike anything we've encountered. The pathogen has no effect. Vex's eyes narrowed to slits. None? None. In fact, he's developing antibodies that neutralize it completely. The Admiral stared at Jack, who waved awkwardly from behind the glass. Trell saw something dangerous flash in Vex's eyes. Calculation, opportunity, greed. This changes everything, Vex said quietly. The balance of power. Sir, this is a scientific discovery, not a military one, Trell protested, feeling protective of Jack. This human wasn't a weapon. He was a living being with rights. Don't be naive, Doctor. Vex turned to leave. Prepare the human for transport to Central Command. The Council will want to examine this development personally. As the door closed behind the Admiral, Trell looked at Jack with growing dread. The human smiled, unaware that his remarkable body had just made him the most valuable and endangered being in the galaxy. What was that about? Jack called through the glass. Trell felt shame burn through him. What had he done by bringing this innocent creature here? Nothing, he lied, his voice catching. Everything is fine. But nothing would ever be fine again. Part 2. The test subject. Jack sat on the edge of the examination table, watching as Dr. Trell prepared another syringe. This was the 5th test today. Though Jack had agreed to these medical examinations, a knot of worry tightened in his stomach. The alien's reactions to each test seemed odd, a mixture of disbelief and barely hidden excitement. This won't hurt, Dr. Trell said, his translator making his high-pitched voice sound almost musical. Just another standard health check. Jack nodded, but doubt clouded his mind. That's what you said about the last 4. What exactly are you looking for? Trell's large eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of nervousness Jack had learned. We simply want to understand human biology better, Trell said, not meeting Jack's gaze. Your species is unique. The needle pierced Jack's skin. This time, the liquid burned slightly as it entered his veins. Jack winced. Sorry, Trell said quickly. Some mild discomfort is normal. Across the lab, Jack noticed other alien scientists watching intently behind a glass wall. Their expressions were impossible to read, but their focus was unsettling. One of them, wearing an elaborate uniform with gleaming badges, stared at Jack with cold, calculating eyes. Who's the important-looking one? Jack asked, nodding toward the window. Trell glanced up nervously. Admiral Vex. He oversees all Council security matters. And why would a military leader care about my medical tests? Trell's hands fumbled with the empty syringe. The council is simply thorough. Now, how do you feel? Jack took a moment to check his body. His skin felt warm and his heart was beating faster, but otherwise he felt normal. Fine, I guess. A bit hot. Trell's eyes widened as he checked a scanner. Remarkable. Your body temperature has increased slightly, but your immune system is already neutralizing the calm. He stopped himself. The vitamins. Jack wasn't stupid. That wasn't vitamins, was it? Before Trell could answer, the lab door slid open. A slender alien female entered, her skin a pale blue and her movements graceful but precise. Agent Mira, Trell said, his voice tight. I wasn't expecting Intelligence Division oversight today. The Council has upgraded this project's priority, she said coolly, her gaze moving to Jack. This is the human? Jack felt like a zoo animal. I have a name. It's Jack. Agent Mira approached him, studying him with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Unlike the others, she seemed less interested in the test results and more interested in Jack himself. You understand your participation is helping us learn about your species? She asked. That's what I was told, Jack replied. Though everyone seems awfully interested in my blood for a simple cultural exchange. Something flickered across her face, respect, perhaps? Perceptive, she murmured. Admiral Vex entered the lab, his large frame dominating the space. Progress report, Doctor. Trell straightened nervously. Subject shows complete resistance to compound C-37, just like the previous 4. Vex's face darkened with excitement. Excellent. Prepare for Level 2 testing. Level 2. Trell protested. Sir, that's not what we agreed. The Council has authorized it. Vex cut him off. He turned to Jack with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We're very grateful for your cooperation. Your species is proving most valuable. As they left, Jack caught Agent Mira watching him thoughtfully. She lingered behind the others. What are you really testing me for? Jack asked her directly. Mira hesitated, then spoke quietly. Listen carefully. What makes you valuable to them might also make you a target. She glanced at the door. Ask Dr. Trell about the War of Broken Worlds. Ask what ended it. Then she was gone, leaving Jack alone with his growing fear and a terrible suspicion about why he was really here. Part 3. The Discovery, the War of Broken Worlds, Dr. Trell said, his voice barely above a whisper. How did you hear about that? Jack sat across from the alien scientist in a small meeting room. After 3 days of increasingly intense tests, he had finally cornered Trell alone. Does it matter? Jack leaned forward. Tell me what ended it. Tell me why I'm really here. Trell's skin paled to a sickly gray. He glanced at the door, then back at Jack. If they find out I told you? He sighed deeply. But you deserve to know. Trell pressed a button on his wrist device, activating a privacy shield. 80 years ago, our galaxy was torn apart by war. Billions died. Entire planets were rendered uninhabitable. Not by weapons of energy or matter, but by biological weapons, Jack finished. The pieces were falling into place. And that's what you've been injecting me with. Trell nodded, shame evident in his drooping shoulders. The most deadly pathogens ever created. Weapons so terrible that just the threat of their use has kept peace since the war ended. Jack's heart pounded. And I'm immune to them. Not just immune. Trell activated a holographic display showing microscopic images of Jack's blood cells. Your immune system actively destroys them. Converts them to harmless proteins. We've never seen anything like it. The images shifted to show comparison data from other species. None showed the same response. All had succumbed to the pathogens within hours. Earth's extreme bacterial and viral diversity. Trell continued, excitement temporarily overcoming his guilt. Your species evolved facing thousands of different pathogens. Your immune systems adapted to recognize and combat almost anything foreign. Jack felt cold despite the room's warmth. So I'm valuable because I can survive your bioweapons. More than survive. Trell pointed to another set of images. Look here. After exposure, your blood produces antibodies that can be replicated. Theoretically, they could be used to create vaccines or treatments. The door suddenly slid open. Admiral Vex entered with 2 armed guards and Agent Mira. What a touching moment of honesty, Doctor, Vex said, his voice like ice. Sharing classified information with the test subject. Trell stood trembling. Admiral, he deserves to know. What he deserves is irrelevant, Vex snapped. He turned to Jack. What matters is what you can do for the Council. Jack stood too, anger replacing fear. I'm not your lab rat. No, Vex agreed with a cold smile. You're much more valuable. You're the key to biological supremacy. He gestured to the guards. Take him to the high-security lab. Prepare for complete antibody harvesting. Trell gasped. That procedure is experimental. It could kill him. A regrettable but acceptable risk, Vex said dismissively. Jack backed away looking for an escape. The guards advanced, weapons drawn. Stop. Agent Myra's voice cut through the tension. The council ordered observation and consensual testing only. Vex's eyes narrowed. The situation has changed. The potential applications are too valuable to risk losing. Applications? Jack demanded. You mean weapons? You want to use me to make more bioweapons? Not weapons, Vex corrected. Insurance. Imagine, vaccines that only work for council races. Bioweapons that affect everyone else. Perfect control. Mira stepped between the guards and Jack. This violates at least 6 galactic protocols. Move aside, Agent, Vex ordered. That's a direct command. For a moment the room was perfectly silent. Then Mira spoke quietly. I cannot follow illegal orders, Admiral. Vex's face twisted with rage. Then you'll be arrested alongside the human. As the guards hesitated, unsure who to obey, Dr. Trell edged toward a console. Jack, he whispered. When I say run, head for the door. Jack gave the slightest nod, muscles tensing for action. Trell's fingers flew across the console. Suddenly alarms blared and the lights flickered. The lab doors throughout the section slid open. Run. Trell shouted. Jack bolted for the door. Behind him, he heard shouting and the sound of a struggle. As he reached the corridor, he glanced back to see Mira disable one guard with a swift strike. Trell was on the floor, Vex standing over him. This way. Mira called, catching up to Jack. We need to reach the shuttle bay. As they ran through the corridors of the massive ship, Jack realized how completely his life had changed. He was no longer just Jack the forestry worker. He had become something else entirely, a biological miracle that could tip the balance of galactic power. And that made him the most hunted human in the universe. Part 4. The escape alarms wailed throughout the Empirical as Jack and Agent Mira raced through its winding corridors. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red. Behind them, the sound of heavy boots and shouted orders grew closer. In here, Mira hissed, pulling Jack into a narrow maintenance shaft. They crawled through the tight space as Jack's heart hammered against his ribs. Why are you helping me? Jack asked between breaths. Myra's eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. Because what Vex plans is wrong. The council was founded to prevent exactly this kind of biological warfare. They emerged into a quieter section of the ship. Mira checked her wrist device. The shuttle bay is 2 levels down. But we need to make a stop first. A stop? We're kind of in a hurry here, Jack protested. Without Dr. Trell's research data, you're just one human. With it, you have proof of what the council is planning. Jack nodded grimly. Lead the way. They moved cautiously through the ship, ducking into doorways whenever patrol groups passed. Jack marveled at Myra's skill. She seemed to know exactly when danger approached and how to avoid it. There, she whispered, pointing to a laboratory door. Trell's private lab. The door was locked, but Mira placed her hand against the security panel. After a moment, it flashed green. Intelligence Division override, she explained with a small smile. Has its advantages. Inside the lab was dark and empty. Mira moved quickly to a central console while Jack kept watch at the door. What exactly are we looking for? He asked. This. Mira held up a small crystalline cube that glowed with swirling data patterns. All of Trell's research on your immune system, including evidence of Vex weaponization plans. A noise from the corridor made them both freeze. Jack peered through the small window in the door. It's Trell, he whispered. And he's hurt. Mira hesitated, then nodded. Jack opened the door just enough to pull the injured scientist inside. Trell's face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. Vex, he gasped. He sealed the shuttle bay. Standard escape routes are blocked. Jack's hope dimmed. Then we're trapped. Not quite. Trell straightened despite his pain. There's a supply transfer scheduled at Outpost 7 in 10 minutes. The cargo bay will open. That's on the other side of the ship, Mira said, frowning. I can get us there, Trell insisted. Through the maintenance tunnels. They moved as quickly as Trell's injuries allowed, squeezing through narrow passages filled with humming equipment. Jack helped support the scientist, feeling a strange bond with this alien who had risked everything to help him. "Why did you do it?" Jack asked quietly. "Stand up to Vex? You knew what would happen." Trell was silent for a moment. "When I became a scientist, I swore to improve life, not weaponize it." His large eyes looked at Jack. "What they wanted to do to you, it was wrong." They emerged into the massive cargo bay just as it began to prepare for transfer. Huge doors were opening to space, with only a thin energy field holding in the atmosphere. "There." Trell pointed to a small transport shuttle. "It's prepped for the transfer." As they moved toward it, a cold voice spoke from behind them. "I'm disappointed, Agent Mira." Admiral Vex stood with 4 armed guards, weapons raised. "Your career was so promising." Mira stepped forward, shielding Jack and Trell. "This isn't about my career. It's about preventing another biological war." Vex laughed. "War? No. What I plan is absolute control. The human's immunity is the key to the next stage of evolution for the Council races." "You mean subjugation of everyone else," Jack said. "Call it what you will." Vex signaled his guards. "Take them. Kill the scientist if you must, but the human and the data must be recovered intact." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. As the guards advanced, Trell lunged for a control panel. Alarms blared as the cargo bay's artificial gravity suddenly failed. Everyone floated upward in confusion. Jack, who had grown up rock climbing, reacted instinctively, pushing off a wall toward the shuttle. Mira followed his example, the data cube clutched tightly in her hand. Trell wasn't so lucky. As he tried to follow, one of the guards fired. The energy blast caught him in the chest. "Trell!" Jack shouted, watching helplessly as the scientist drifted, gravely wounded. With his last strength, Trell reached the panel again and pressed another control. The energy field at the bay doors flickered. "Go," he gasped through the comm system. "Tell everyone what they plan." The field collapsed. Explosive decompression pulled everything toward the opening. Jack and Mira managed to grab onto the shuttle's entry hatch, pulling themselves inside as loose equipment and screaming guards were sucked into space. The last thing Jack saw before the hatch closed was Trell's body drifting away, one hand raised in a final farewell. Mira took the pilot's seat, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. The shuttle broke free just as the Empirical's weapon systems came online. "Hang on," she warned as they accelerated away from the ship. As the stars streaked into lines around them, Jack felt grief for Trell mixed with determination. The scientist had given his life so that Jack could warn humanity. "Where to now?" he asked quietly. Mira's face was grim but resolved. "Earth. We need to warn your people before Vex convinces the Council to take more drastic measures." Jack stared out at the vast darkness of space, feeling the weight of billions of lives, human and alien, resting on his shoulders. "Then let's go home," he said. Part 5. Return to Earth. The shuttle shuddered violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as Mira fought to keep them from burning up. "The damage from our escape is worse than I thought," she said, her voice tight with concentration. "I can't guarantee a soft landing." Jack gripped his seat, watching his home planet grow larger through the viewport. After 2 weeks in space, hiding in asteroid fields and making random jumps to avoid Vex pursuit ships, they were finally home, if they survived the landing. "There." Jack pointed to a vast stretch of forest. "That's near where they first found me. Not many people, plenty of cover." Mira nodded and aimed the failing shuttle toward the forest. They hit the tree canopy with a terrible crunching sound. Branches snapped against the hull. Jack's head slammed into the side wall as they skidded to a stop in a small clearing. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of cooling metal and the distant calls of startled birds. "You okay?" Jack asked, touching a cut on his forehead. Mira nodded, though her blue skin had paled significantly. "Your atmosphere, it's very rich. Makes me a bit dizzy." They gathered what they could from the shuttle, the precious data cube, some alien technology and emergency supplies. As they stepped outside, Mira staggered slightly, and used to Earth's gravity and air. "We need to destroy the shuttle," she said. "If Vex forces track it here?" Jack nodded grimly. They activated the shuttle's self-destruct sequence and moved a safe distance away. The small explosion echoed through the forest, sending birds scattering from nearby trees. "Now what?" Mira asked, looking around at the endless green that surrounded them. "Now we walk," Jack said. "There's a ranger station about 5 miles from here. We can try to contact someone who'll listen." They trekked through the forest, Jack supporting Mira when the Earth environment became too much for her. He found himself explaining simple things: why water fell from the sky, why the wind moved the trees, why the ground was covered in so many different plants. Your world is overwhelming, Mira said, pausing to catch her breath. So much life everywhere. No wonder your immune systems evolved to be so powerful. By sunset, they reached the ranger station, a small wooden building nestled among tall pines. Through the windows they could see a single ranger at a desk, talking on a radio. Wait here, Jack told Mira. Let me talk to him first. Jack approached alone, aware of how he must look: dirty, injured, wild-eyed. The ranger, Bill according to his name tag, looked up in surprise as Jack entered. Jesus, man. What happened to you? Hiking accident. Bill, I need your help. I need to contact the military or the government. It's an emergency. Bill's expression changed from concern to wariness. What kind of emergency? The kind where Earth is in danger. Jack took a deep breath. I know how this will sound, but I was abducted by aliens. I escaped. They're coming here and they're dangerous. Bill stared at him for a long moment, then reached slowly for his radio. Okay, buddy. Why don't you sit down while I call someone to help you? Jack knew what Bill was thinking, that he was dealing with someone unstable, possibly dangerous. He needed proof. I'm not crazy, Jack said firmly. And I can prove it. He went to the door and called for Mira. When she stepped into the light, Bill's radio clattered to the floor. His mouth opened and closed without sound. This is Agent Mira, Jack said. She helped me escape. Bill backed against the wall. That's not a costume. No, Mira confirmed. I am Arvani from the Galactic Council Intelligence Division. They spent the next hour explaining everything to Bill, whose shock gradually gave way to grim understanding. By the end, he was on the secure line to his supervisors, speaking in rapid, urgent tones. Someone's coming, he said finally, hanging up. Military and some government people. They'll be here by morning. That night, as Bill kept nervous watch by the window, Jack and Mira examined the data cube in the dim light of the station's back room. Even if your authorities believe us, will they be able to stop the council? Mira asked quietly. Your world has no space defenses, no diplomatic standing. Jack touched the cube gently. We have this. Proof of their plans and... He hesitated. And we have me. My blood. My immunity. Mira's eyes met his, understanding the weight of his words. You're offering yourself as a research subject. For your own people. If my immune system can be studied, maybe Earth can create defenses against whatever Vex sends. Mira reached out, her four-fingered hand resting lightly on his arm. That's a heavy burden to carry alone. Jack smiled sadly. I'm not alone though, am I? A sudden noise from outside made them both tense. Bill rushed into the room. Helicopters coming. Lots of them. His face was pale. And there's something else, something in the sky. Too big to be one of ours. Jack and Mira exchanged alarmed glances and moved to the window. Beyond the approaching helicopters, a faint light was growing brighter in the night sky. Is that? Jack began. It's an Arvani scout ship, Mira confirmed, her voice tight with fear. Vex found us faster than I expected. As the helicopters landed in the clearing outside, disgorging grim-faced soldiers and serious men in dark suits, Jack clutched the data cube tighter. The race to save Earth had begun, and they were already running out of time. Part 6. Diplomatic crisis. 3 days after their return to Earth, Jack stood at the window of a secure government facility, watching military vehicles patrol the perimeter. The building, hidden deep in a mountain range, hummed with frantic activity as the world's government struggled to respond to undeniable proof of alien life. They're ready for you, a stern-faced woman in a dark suit said from the doorway. Jack nodded and followed her through a maze of corridors into a large conference room. Inside, representatives from major world powers sat around a long table, their faces grim. Screens on the wall showed military and political leaders who couldn't attend in person. At the far end of the table sat Mira, looking small but composed. Beside her was a new arrival, a tall, elegant alien with silver skin who had arrived on the scout ship. He had introduced himself as High Counselor Wren, a senior diplomat sent to resolve the unfortunate misunderstanding. Jack took his seat as cameras recorded everything. This meeting was being broadcast to emergency sessions of the United Nations and powerful government bodies worldwide. General Harris, the highest-ranking military officer present, spoke first. Let's be clear about the situation. Your ship entered Earth's atmosphere without permission. We have testimony and evidence suggesting your council planned to use humans as biological weapons. And now you claim this is a misunderstanding? High Counselor Ren smiled thinly. What you have is the word of a confused human and a rogue intelligence agent. His voice was smooth, reasonable. Agent Mira was under tremendous stress during her assignment. She misinterpreted research data and made accusations against a respected military leader. That's not true, Mira said firmly. The data cube contains Admiral Vex's own communications about weaponizing human immunity. Data that could easily be fabricated, Ren countered. He turned to address the room. The Galactic Council comes in peace. We simply wish to establish first contact with humanity in a controlled manner. Unfortunately, when your citizen Jack was brought aboard for cultural exchange, Agent Mira became emotionally attached and fabricated this conspiracy to justify bringing him home. Jack felt anger burning through him. That's a lie. Dr. Trell gave his life so we could escape with the truth. Ren's expression became sympathetic. Dr. Trell was killed in an accident caused by Agent Myra's reckless actions. We mourn his loss deeply. The room erupted in heated debate. Some officials argued for caution in dealing with advanced aliens, while others insisted on believing Jack and Myra's warnings. Various voices rose. A scientist named Dr. Lu cleared her throat. She had been studying the data cube and Jack's blood samples since their arrival. If I may, she said firmly, the biological data in this cube is genuine. The tests performed on Jack exposed him to engineered pathogens of incredible sophistication. Pathogens designed specifically to target sentient nervous systems. She activated a display showing microscopic images. Furthermore, I've confirmed that human immune response neutralizes these agents completely. This would indeed make humans uniquely valuable in biological warfare. Ren's composure slipped slightly. These were standard medical tests, nothing more. Standard tests using weapons-grade pathogens? Dr. Lu asked coldly. The High Counselor changed tactics. Even if some tests were unorthodox, they were unauthorized actions by Admiral Vex. The Council had no knowledge of this. Then prove it, Jack challenged. Open all your research facilities for inspection. Agree to destroy any bioweapons you've developed. Ren's eyes narrowed. The Council does not respond to demands from pre-space civilizations. General Harris leaned forward. We may be pre-space, but we're not defenseless. Your ship is currently surrounded by enough firepower to ensure it never leaves our atmosphere. A tense silence fell over the room. Ren studied the humans carefully. The Council wishes peaceful relations with Earth, he said finally. Perhaps we can reach a compromise. Hours of negotiation followed. Eventually, a preliminary agreement was reached. The Council would send a full diplomatic delegation to continue talks about Earth joining the galactic community. In return, Earth would share limited information about human biology. As the meeting adjourned, Jack caught Myra's eye. Her slight head shake confirmed his suspicions. This wasn't over. Later, in a private room, Jack, Mira, Dr. Lu, and General Harris gathered to speak freely. They're stalling, Mira said. Buying time while Vex prepares something. What can we do? Jack asked. We can't prove their true intentions. Dr. Lu looked troubled. There's something else. Based on my analysis of the data cube, these pathogens were specifically engineered to be undetectable by standard methods. They could deploy something during the diplomatic mission, and we wouldn't know until it was too late. A goodwill virus, Jack realized. Something to make us more compliant during negotiations. General Harris nodded grimly. We need to be ready. Dr. Lu, how quickly can you develop detection methods for these stealth pathogens? With Jack's help, perhaps a few days. As they discussed options, an aide burst into the room. Sir, we've just received word. 3 more Council ships have entered the solar system. They're positioning themselves in orbit. Myra's face paled. It's starting. Vex wouldn't wait for diplomacy to fail. Jack stared at the satellite images appearing on the room's display. The elegant alien vessels looked peaceful enough, but he knew better. Somewhere on those ships were weapons that could end human civilization without firing a single energy blast. We need to warn everyone, he said firmly. Not just governments, every person on Earth needs to know what's coming. As night fell over the facility, humans and 1 alien ally prepared for a battle unlike any Earth had faced before. Not a war of bombs and bullets, but of microscopic invaders that could turn human bodies against themselves. Unless, Jack thought as he watched the distant lights of the alien ships through a window, the most unexpected weapon of all, a Deathworlder's immune system, could become humanity's shield against the stars. Part 7. The Countermeasure Dr. Lu's laboratory buzzed with desperate activity. Scientists from around the world worked in shifts, their faces etched with exhaustion. In the center of it all was Jack, hooked to machinery that continuously drew and analyzed his blood. How much longer? General Harris asked, looking at the dark circles under Jack's eyes. I'm fine, Jack insisted, though his pale skin told a different story. 4 or 5 days straight, he had submitted to endless tests and transfusions, his immune system being pushed to its limits. Dr. Lu looked up from her microscope. His antibodies are remarkable, but we need more time to synthesize them in quantities that would matter. Time is something we don't have, Mira said, entering the lab with a tablet. Her face was grim. The council delegation arrives tomorrow. And I've detected unusual energy signatures from their ships consistent with large-scale biological containment systems. Everyone fell silent. They knew what that meant. How close are we? Jack asked quietly. Dr. Lu hesitated. We've managed to replicate your antibodies in the lab, but distribution is the problem. Even if we made enough for everyone, there's no way to deliver it worldwide before the council acts. Jack closed his eyes, frustration washing over him. All this pain and effort, and they were still going to fail. A new voice spoke from the doorway. Perhaps I could be of assistance. They turned to see a thin, frail alien leaning heavily on a cane. Despite his injuries and obvious pain, there was no mistaking him. Trell? Jack whispered in disbelief. The alien scientist smiled weakly. It seems I am harder to kill than Admiral Vex anticipated. Mira rushed forward to help him to a chair. We thought you were dead. How did you survive? A passing trader ship picked me up after the decompression. I've been recovering in secret, tracking Vex's movements. Trell looked around the lab with approval. You've made progress, I see. Dr. Lu quickly brought Trell up to speed on their work and the problem they faced. Ah, Trell said when she finished. You're thinking too conventionally. The council wouldn't use a standard pathogen delivery system. They'd use atmospheric dispersal. Like crop dusting? General Harris asked. On a global scale, Trell confirmed. Their ships can release engineered pathogens into the upper atmosphere, where air currents would carry them worldwide within days. Jack looked up, a spark of hope in his eyes. Then can't we use the same method for the antibodies? Trell's large eyes widened. Precisely. But we would need access to their delivery systems. Or, Dr. Lu said slowly, we create our own version. She turned to her computer, typing rapidly. If we could modify Jack's antibodies to survive in aerosol form and remain stable in the atmosphere, they'd spread just like the council's pathogens, Mira finished. Hope flickered through the room for the first time in days. Hours blurred into one another as they worked. Jack gave more blood as Dr. Lu and Trell collaborated, combining Earth science with advanced alien knowledge. Military aircraft were prepared for high-altitude dispersal while factories worldwide were retooled to mass-produce the modified antibodies. Jack watched in amazement as nations that had been enemies days before shared resources and information freely. The imminent threat from the stars had united humanity in a way nothing else could. On the morning the council delegation was set to arrive, Jack stood on the roof of the facility, watching the sunrise. Mira joined him, her alien features pensive. The atmospheric countermeasure is ready, she said. Dr. Lu is making final stability checks. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of what was coming. Will it be enough? Honestly, I don't know. This approach has never been tried before. They stood in silence for a moment, a human and an alien united against a common threat. Whatever happens, Jack said finally, thank you for believing me, for helping us. Myra's hand found his. Your world is worth fighting for. I understand that now. An alarm sounded, calling them back inside. On monitors throughout the facility, they watched as the council's diplomatic shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, landing at the designated meeting site, a specially constructed platform in neutral international waters. High Counselor Ren emerged with 12 other aliens, all wearing ornate ceremonial garb. They carried elaborate gifts and wore expressions of benevolent goodwill for the cameras. It's starting, General Harris said, watching alongside world leaders. Satellite monitoring shows the 3 council ships in orbit have opened external vents. They're preparing to release something. Dr. Lu burst into the command center. We've got confirmation. They're dispersing biological agents into the upper atmosphere. The room erupted in controlled chaos as commands were issued. Within minutes, Earth's response took flight, fighter jets and high-altitude aircraft deploying Jack's modified antibodies in a parallel pattern to the Council's dispersal. On the diplomatic feed, High Counselor Wren was making a grand speech about friendship between worlds, unaware that his secret attack had been detected and countered. Hours passed in tense waiting. The first results from atmosphere sampling showed both the Council's pathogens and Jack's antibodies spreading on air currents exactly as predicted. The question was, which would win? Jack paced the monitoring room, watching as reports came in from testing stations worldwide. Dr. Liu and Trell analyzed the data, their expressions shifting from concentration to disbelief. "It's working," Dr. Liu whispered, then louder, "It's working. The antibodies aren't just neutralizing the pathogens, they're completely breaking them down and continuing to spread." Trell studied the molecular models with awe. The human immune response, it's adapting to the changing pathogen structures. Remarkable. On the diplomatic feed, confusion broke out as Wren received an urgent communication from the orbiting ships. His composed mask slipped, revealing anger and disbelief. "They know," Mira said, watching his reaction. "Their attack failed." General Harris gave a grim smile. "Time to show our hand then." In the diplomatic meeting, Earth's chief negotiator calmly presented evidence of the Council's attempted attack, including atmospheric sampling that had detected the pathogens. Wren's denial died on his lips as data continued to stream in from his ships. Not only had their weapon failed, but something was actively destroying it. "What have you done?" Wren demanded, abandoning all pretense of diplomacy. The human negotiator smiled. "We've demonstrated that Earth is not as defenseless as you believed. Your bioweapons have been neutralized, and the antibodies responsible will remain in our atmosphere for months, defeating any similar attempts." As the diplomatic crisis unfolded on screen, Jack felt a strange mixture of triumph and exhaustion. His blood, his immune system, had become Earth's shield. A Deathworlder's evolution had defeated the most advanced biological weapons in the galaxy. "It's not over," Mira cautioned, watching Wren's furious face on the screen. "Vex will have other plans." "But we've bought time," Trell said, his voice stronger than before. "And more importantly, we've sent a message to the Council. Humans cannot be subjugated through biological means." Jack looked at his bandaged arm where countless needles had drawn his blood. The sacrifice had been worth it. "Let them come," he said quietly. "Earth is ready." The counterattack. The air in the underground bunker felt heavy with fear and hope. Dr. Alan Reed's hands shook as he loaded the modified bioweapon into the delivery system. Sweat dripped from his forehead as memories of his captivity flashed before his eyes. The faces of those who had suffered in the alien labs haunted him, but now he had a chance to make things right. "Are you sure this will work?" General Hayes asked, her voice tight with worry. The weight of humanity's survival rested on her shoulders, and the deep lines on her face showed it. "No," Reed admitted, his throat dry. "But it's our only chance." Outside, the alien ships darkened the sky like massive thunderclouds. Their weapons had already destroyed major cities. Millions were dead. The survivors huddled in shelters, praying for a miracle. Reed thought of his family, not knowing if they were alive or dead. His heart ached, but he pushed the pain aside. There was no time for personal grief. "Launch in 3 minutes," a voice announced over the speakers. The room fell silent. Some soldiers closed their eyes in prayer. Others stared straight ahead, faces hard with determination. Then, a commotion at the entrance. Guards raised their weapons. "Wait!" Reed shouted when he saw who it was. "She's a friend." Mira stumbled into the room, her alien form battered and bleeding green fluid. Her large eyes found Reed's. "I came to help," she said weakly. "My people, many of them, don't support this war." Hope sparked in Reed's chest for the first time in days. "You made it." Mira handed him a small device. The military council ships shield frequencies and locations of their air filtration systems. Her voice was filled with shame and determination. "What they're doing is wrong. My people were never told the truth." General Hayes studied Mira with suspicion that slowly turned to cautious acceptance. "Can we trust her?" Reed nodded without hesitation. "With our lives." They quickly adjusted their plans with Myra's information. The countdown continued. Launch. The modified human bioweapons shot into the sky, targeting the exact vulnerabilities Mira had revealed. For 3 agonizing hours, nothing seemed to happen. Reed paced the bunker, his stomach in knots. Had they failed? Was this the end? Then reports started coming in. Alien ships were losing power. Their weapons went silent. Communications intercepted panic and confusion. "It's working," General Hayes whispered, tears in her eyes. "It's actually working." On the screens they watched alien ships retreating. Some crashed. Their mighty invasion force was falling apart. Mira stood beside Reed, her thin hand in his. "My people will help rebuild what was destroyed," she promised. "Not all aliens wanted this war. Many will stand with Earth now." For the first time in weeks, Reed allowed himself to feel something beyond fear and anger. Hope bloomed in his chest. "We're not just surviving," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're changing the galaxy." As dawn broke, humans emerged from their shelters to see the alien ships retreating. They hugged each other, cried, and looked up at the clearing sky with wonder. Earth had not just survived. Earth had won, and Reed knew this was just the beginning. The hardest part, building a better galaxy where such horrors would never happen again, was still ahead. But for now, for this moment, he allowed himself to feel the sweet relief of victory. #the new Galactic Order. 1 year had passed since the failed invasion of Earth. Dr. Alan Reed stood at the large window of the new Galactic Coalition headquarters, watching the stars. Earth ships floated alongside alien vessels in peaceful cooperation. It still felt like a dream sometimes. "Ambassador Reed?" A young aide approached with respect in her eyes. "They're ready for you." Reed nodded, straightening his formal jacket. His new title still felt strange. He was a scientist, not a politician. But he understood the aliens and the humans better than most. That made him the right person for this job, even if it wasn't the life he had imagined. In the Grand Meeting Hall, representatives from 57 alien civilizations waited. Some looked like insects, others like plants or crystals. Mira sat among them, now serving as the representative of her own people. Their eyes met across the room, and she gave him a small nod that filled him with warmth. At the center of the room, in a special containment cell, sat Director Trell. His once proud posture was now bent with defeat. The trial had been long, revealing the full extent of his crimes against countless species. Today was the final judgment. "We gather to witness justice," announced the Chief Justice, a tall being with 6 arms and wise, ancient eyes. "And to remember why we formed this coalition." Reed's mind drifted to the difficult months after the war. Earth cities being rebuilt. Grieving families. Trust being slowly, painfully established between humans and aliens. The shock when they discovered other worlds that had been silently harvested for decades before Earth was targeted. The Chief Justice continued speaking, but Reed was watching the faces around the room. Former enemies now working together. Scientists from Earth teaching alien doctors about immune systems, while alien engineers helped rebuild Earth cities. Pain was still fresh, but healing had begun. When it was Reed's turn to speak, he approached the center of the hall. His heart pounded. The words he would say today would be remembered for generations. "A year ago, I hated Director Trell and everything he represented," Reed began simply. The room fell silent. "I wanted revenge for what was done to Earth and to me personally." Reed looked at Trell, meeting his eyes directly. "But hate and fear are what brought us to war in the first place." The military council feared what was different. They saw Earth's strong immune systems as a threat and a resource to exploit, not as a gift that could be shared. He turned to face the gathered representatives. "Today we choose a different path. The new biological exchange program has already created treatments that are saving lives across the galaxy. Earth is no longer a death world to be feared, but a world whose harsh history created strength that now protects us all." Tears filled Reed's eyes, but he didn't try to hide them. "My home was nearly destroyed. Many of your worlds suffered too. But today we build something that will last beyond our pain. Something better." When the judgment was delivered, life imprisonment for Trell instead of execution. Some were angry, but most understood. The cycle of revenge had to end somewhere. Later, as Reed watched the first mixed crew of human and alien scientists board a research vessel, he felt a deep peace settle in his chest. There would be more challenges ahead. Trust was fragile. Old fears wouldn't disappear overnight. But when a small alien child waved excitedly at him from the observation deck, Reed smiled and waved back. This was what they had fought for. Not just survival, but a future where differences brought strength, not fear. Earth's place in the stars was finally secure.